let's get started. So welcome to this presentation on progressing with a ship identification system. That's a very verbose title, and most of you may wonder what the hell we are talking about right now. That's good because we are going to explain that in this presentation. I am CCP Terbium. We have CCP Optimal and CCP Arrow. And together we are going to explain to you what this exactly means and why you should bother about it. So it's working. In the first part, I will be going over the why are we doing that in the first place? Why would you care? So identifying the problem on this particular point. Then I will go over how do we clarify the progression in Eve. I will explain exactly what that means in the first part as well. Then CCP Arrow will go over the fancy, sexy stuff. So if you have to sleep during the presentation, make sure you sleep in the first two parts and get awake on that one, because that's where the fancy stuff is going to be.
Oh, come on. You're very interesting as well.
And the last part, if we have time, that is, we'll take questions. OK, so let's get started with identifying the problem. What exactly are we talking about here? Why you should care about that, and how it is going to be on a client. So it all came down with the work we did in 2011 when we started having a look at the Tiriside initiative for ship balancing. How many of you here have been to the ship balancing presentation yesterday? OK, that's decent. So back then, we had a look at how the ships were tied and connected together. And we showed that to various people inside TCP, and all of a sudden they realized, oh, wow, the ships actually have a progression. I didn't realize that, and that's the whole problem we have at the moment on a client. You are a new player, you are starting to play Eve as a rookie ship here on the left, and you are shown quite a number of choices and options in ships. And the problem is, how do you know which one you want to go into? How do I know I am starting on the Emperor? How do I know I want to go for the Omen, or the Harbinger Navy issue, or the Abaddon, or the Avatar? How do I even make a choice? Is it logical for me to even just go for the Titan here? Or even if I want to just look at frigates, how do I make a sensible choice between interceptors or Navy pirate ships here? Well, at the moment, you add on top of that another layer of complexity, which is just like skill requirements, which is just a binary system. Can you fly a ship, or can you not fly a ship, and how many days do you have left before that? And on top of that, we add another layer of complexity, which are certificates. So yeah, as a new player, but not only as a player in Eve, you're trying to make goals for your future, because that's all what Eve is about, just making long-term future goals. What are you going to be next year, next 2 years? But we are not making that choice easy for you, because, well, there is the lack of visual tools. So as a player, I am interested in battle cruisers, and I want to make a good choice. Am I going to go for the Brutix or the Hurricane? Well, I have to look at show infos, and that's where I'm going to get confused, because I don't have anything I want on a single tab. I have to constantly switch between attribute fittings or even descriptions to get the skill bonuses. Even when I'm looking at a single tab, the information is not that clear. When I'm looking at agility, it's not even consistent among different ship classes. So drone bay could be condensed. It could be a lot more like you have on the ship fitting, instead of having this huge list where you have to constantly scroll bottom and up to get anything out of it. So it's not clear. And then it's, again, even more complicated with what we are doing. The ship balancing is introducing new lines, like, as I've explained a bit yesterday, with combat, attack, disruption, support, exploration, mining hulls. where do we tell you that on the client? How am I supposed to progress from the left part, which are like frigates, to battleships? Am I even interested in going to battleships? What is the difference between battleships and frigates? You don't know. You have to just do weird show info, and you are even so good at it, we rely on third-party tools to do that with like EveMod. And don't get even me started on the Wikipedia we have. So yeah, again, lack of visual tools all over the place. So how do we fix that? Well, from a design perspective, the first thing we are doing for Odyssey is the skill changes. And that's another reason why we have been doing it so far with the ships, is that when we finally came up to map how the progression looks like for the various ships in game, it was quite an overcomplicated mess. Not only we have like generic skills with battle cruisers and destroyers mingle with racial skills at the top with like racial battleships, cruisers, and frigates, which creates a lot of problems when you want to specialize into tactical hulls. So if you want to go for an absolution, not only do you need Hammer Cruiser 5, but you also need Battle Cruisers 5, and then you need all heavy assault ships, which itself require assault ships. It's very confusing. It's not very consistent as well. So we're changing that to something which is progression-wise a lot more consistent, with having like 4 variations for destroyers and battle cruisers, and having the Tech 2 specializations, I'm going to go back to show you, a lot more clear, because before, to specialize in a field command ship, you needed heavy assault ships, and before that, you needed assault ships. Now, you only need to train and specialize into the battle cruisers and not go into classes you are not interested into. So if I am a battle cruiser pilot and I like how battle cruisers feel, and I want to specialize in one, I don't have to go into classes I am not interested into. However, that doesn't mean that we are necessarily going to make it very easy for you. We still want time sinks where you specialize. We just want them to be consistent. So the second thing we are changing, where we are looking at and changing the certificate system. So the certificate system at its core has very noble goals. It's trying to tell you how well you can fly a ship. So the prerequisite tab tells you if you can fly a ship or not. This one is how well do I fly a ship. So when you look at the moment on the Hyperion recommended tab, you see all of these certificates, but you don't know what they mean. You don't know what they mean until you actually have to open one. And you can also do that throughout the character sheet, and that's my awesome character here. You can go over here, you can see the certificates, and when you open, actually, you don't get the information you need, which are skills, until you open the certification planner. And it's adding a pile of mess on top of another pile of confusion, because even here, you don't get all the skills you need to know. You have to constantly swap forth and back between the certificates because you have skills mixed with other certificates, and it's very confusing to follow and get exactly all the skills you need to get to the next level of the certificate. So we would like to iterate on that in the future. How? Well, instead of having one certificate for one level, so instead of having navigation basic, which is a certificate, and navigation standard, which is another certificate, and navigation improved, which is a third one, we say navigation is a single certificate. And this single certificate has 5 levels. So only by doing that, you are just decreasing the complexity by 5. And then in each of these levels, we show you exactly on the same fashion that you will have on the prerequisite tab, which skills you already have unlocked for each step in green, which skills you have but not at the proper level in yellow, and which skills you are currently missing in red. So if I'm a player, it's always about the next step. I'm having navigation improved. I know I am missing navigation 4, acceleration control 3, and fuel conservation. And then I move on. I see what I miss until I get elite, EPIN, elite status here. The other thing we want to do is sum up all the certificates of the same level into a proper mastery level. So it sounds complicated, so I'm going to use pictures because it's actually not. Now, if you like to look at the Megatron, instead of having a recommended tab with certificates which are not that readable, you will instead get collapsible tabs with certificates, and you get the skills inside directly, as mentioned, and I'm going to go back here. So if I go back to my Megatron, I am a player. I want to look at the mastery which is improved. I will have a collection for all mastery improved, all the certificates that are improved of the same level. So I know I want to train the next level of navigation for my Megatron. I open it, I see I missed navigation 4, sorry about that, acceleration 3, and fuel conservation 1. So again, having this mastery level attached to the ship with certificates at the same level. So if I'm looking here at mastery level improved, you will have all the collection of certificates set to improved for it. And if I want to have a look at my long-term plan for the Megatron, I will just click the gold icon at the right here, which will be like the elite mastery, which will display all the certificates that are elite. So I will see elite here for navigation. I will see elite tackling, elite hybrid turret, elite drones, and elite engineering. And that will be a lot easier to grasp. Then, the other step will be when you are looking at your character sheet and you are looking at certificates, we will show you the ships that are related to the certificates. So for instance, if I'm on character sheet and I'm looking at large hybrid turret certificate, it will display all the ships that have these certificates assigned to them. So for instance, a Megatron and a Hyperion. So you can directly see the connection between character skills and ships you unlock for it. Another thing we are doing is having a look at the skill groups themselves. At the moment, when you are looking at the character sheet, you have like artificial groups that sort the skills on different fields. But these fields are not necessarily very consistent all over the place. So if I am, for example, a cavalry pilot and I'm looking for skills that are related to shields, so I can be more resilient in my Raven, well, where are the shield skills here? Well, they are inside engineering, but you will first need to open and browse all of this to just guess where they are. Same with the armor skills, they are inside mechanics, but how do you know that? In the first place, it's not very intuitive. And in mechanics, we also have like not related stuff, like we have outpost construction and various construction skills, and we also have rigging skills. So as time passed on this, we use the skill groups as a bit of a skill dump, especially for science. If any of you has been to science, you know how the various skills that are inside. So we want to clean that up. We want to clean that up by having proper groups that actually match the effects of the skills that are related into them. So if I'm looking at armor, well, now I have a group called armor, and all the skills that affect my armor and hull. Yeah, so let's not be nitpicking here. Armor and hull will be inside. If I want to look at shields, where I have a category called shields, and all the skills that affect shields are inside. Same with like you have on the left, you have spaceship command and subsystems, but these two categories actually are the same. They allow you to fly ships. The only difference between the two is that the first one is for Tech 1 and Tech 2, and the second one is for like Tech 3. So we merge that into starship piloting. So if you can fly a ship or not, it will be piloting. If how well you master a ship through a certificate, it will be mastery. And yeah, that's basically about it. You can see other changes. This is still work in progress. So we'll be taking your feedback on how we change all of this in general when you come to it, regarding group changes, regarding the certificates themselves. And don't forget that the skill changes for the ships themselves are coming for Odyssey. We have a lot of details coming on the blog, but remember, if you could fly it before, you can still fly it now. Now, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of CCP Arrow. That's going to blow your mind. Thank you.
Hey guys, so I'm gonna go through the UI design part of this feature. So when we wanted to start to look at how we wanted to implement this, we went ahead and looked at the, let's see, next, ooh, it works. We looked at the feature goals that we had for the feature. So the important thing that we wanted to get out of this was to allow players to visualize better their progression in the game, because it's not something that you can easily do, and you can certainly not do it in a visual way currently. And we didn't want to compete with what we already have, so we're not going to have the information as detailed as you have in the show info or fitting screen. It's more to allow you to compare and easily choose your path. So we took these different feature goals that we had, and we tried out different things. And what I'm going to be showing you is all prototypes. So none of these things have been decided. They're very much work in progress. But we want to show you a little bit of a glimpse into how we came to do these things and why we did them, and what we thought might be problematic and what we thought might be something we want to explore further. So we looked at doing some initial wireframes. We just created very crude visual mock-ups of how we wanted this to be displayed. One of the things that we early on decided to explore further was a way to navigate into the system, this tech tree, if you will, into a perspective view, so that you would have the actual model of the ship kind of be in a three-dimensional space. This is something kind of radical. It's not something we saw in many other games, none actually. They usually just have a two-dimensional representation of a progression, which is, of course, the most readable one. So this was something we definitely needed to see if it could work out first before we did anything more with it. So one of the things that we initially did was look at the layout. What would be the most appropriate layout in terms of understanding progression? How do you see progression? Is it from left to right? Is it from bottom to top? Or maybe in the case of our game, where you start off maybe with a certain race, but that doesn't mean you can't go anywhere else. So in Eve, it's more the case of you starting in the center, perhaps, and you can go into any direction you choose, because you haven't defined a certain path once you picked a certain race. You can always go and pick another one later. So that was something we wanted to look at further as well. So we looked at different ways to represent a single starting point, a centralized starting point. One of the things that was kind of fun about that is that we could position the faction ships in their appropriate location depending on how their technology was. So, for example, as you can see here, the Gurista one is located between Caldari and Galente because that's how their ships are made out of those technologies. So this could actually also visually explain to players how these different faction ships come to be. So just a quick glimpse at the overall look. So this is kind of where we got, and then we're going to explain like these bits and parts in the slides coming after this. But what I wanted to point you out here is that we categorized the ship groups into the module sizes, because it doesn't really matter in terms of deciding, when you're strategizing, what the actual ship hull size is. It's more the sizes of the modules. So even though you have some of the ships here in the category of small and medium that are vastly different in size in practice, because they use the same module size, we put them into the same kind of grouping. So looking a little bit further into this, the first thing we looked at was that we thought we would need some ship group icons in the game, so that you could actually define a certain ship group at a glance. Something we think would be needed in a game, and if it would go well, maybe we could see that being visually represented in the game elsewhere. You could see more than 3 types of brackets. You could see the actual ship group that you're looking at in the overview or in space. But for now, we're just looking at it for this, and the purpose here was basically create some kind of iconic manner to explain the different roles and different hull sizes of the ships. So the The two grouping that we created were basically combat and industrial, and the middle line there you can see is basically the basic hulls. You have the different they're kind of thicker as they become bigger, but the most important thing to distinguish between them is that they are indented when they're very fast, and the less indented they are at the bottom, the slower they are and bigger at the same time. So you can use that kind of to rationalize what you're looking at. And of course, with any abstract system, when you're creating a new type of iconography, there's no way for you to distinguish something the first time you see it with no context, no information. But if you have it right, then with time, players will start to just know them by looking at the icon only, and they don't need the text with it. So if we look at also the separation between the capital and supercaps and titans, we had maxed out the size we could represent within the iconic frame we had, so we couldn't really show them bigger. We certainly couldn't go into the size they should be. So we just compartmentalized them more, so they're layered into 2 or 3 sections depending on like the grandness of them. And then the industrial ones have this little extra compartment beneath them to kind of represent their cargo or their industrial purpose. And the two up there, the destroyer and the battlecruiser, are basically representing the more advanced version of the frigate and cruiser. So they have like an extra little bit coming out of the bottom of them because they are representing some extra ability. It's a more kind of specialization than the basic ones. So that's the way we went with it for now. And of course, once we see this in user testing and we can kind of see if people are actually managing to understand the difference between them, we can see if this needs adjusting. But we definitely are very excited about seeing something like this happen, because in the past we just didn't have anything to kind of visually represent a ship group in the game. And then we wanted to visualize as well, you know, the progression in the tree itself without having to explain it with words. So that's a new theory for us, you know, not explaining it in a box of text. But it's a tricky thing to do because there's so many things tied to ships in our game. So when you're looking at a ship group, you're basically looking at what is what ties all the ships within that group together in terms of progression. So in piloting, which basically just means if you can fly it or not, you either have it grayed out, where you don't have the skills necessary, or it's lit up. Now, because we have ship bonuses tied to the piloting skills, we need to somehow represent the levels. So we're showing that with little bits. So if you maxed it out, it shows all 5. The problem here, though, is that, of course, because you're looking at the ship group, you're looking at a level that's like combined. So when we look at the mastery, that becomes a little bit more tricky, because then you're looking at something that's kind of abstract. It can be a combination of various mastery levels that you've reached on different ships within the group. So what we're showing there is not like a definite dot or some kind of a leveling visually. It's more like from 0 to 100, and so it kind of slides, it kind of bleeds up. And then once you've maxed it out, which means that you've reached elite level in all the ships within the group, we kind of reward you with this greatness glow coming around it. Very rewarding if you actually reach that level on a whole group. Now the side bits here are basically the lines that go to these groups, and if they are pulsing, that means that you're actively progressing into that group, and if they're solid, that means you've just reached it, you're elite. And when you go into the actual ships and view them, then we show you the appropriate mastery icon with those ships, and we reward you extra with the elite one, making it gold. But again, these are all work in progress. We haven't defined any of the styles or the visual representations yet. We also made a navigation control for easy access between different parts of the system. So if you've drill down to a certain race and you're looking at a certain ship group there, you can jump to another race and just see the ship group in that race without like always navigating back and in again. So that's easy for comparison. And of course, in the navigation, we also show the racial ones in their appropriate location, depending on how their technology is derived from the races. And then when we're looking at the layout, we tried different methods. We definitely did try all of them just to kind of see which one worked the best. Here's one with the left to right setup. And one of the things that we noticed is that it doesn't really feel like you're progressing from left to right. You kind of more get the feeling that upwards is more advanced, but it isn't really. This is just more specialized in the same size group that you're in. The biggest steps here are from left to right. And this also makes the industrials look a little bit inferior because you kind of go downwards. So we went with trying this out more further because we just felt that the starting point was more clear. You're kind of moving on the central path if you just want to go with the basic path, and if you want to be an industrialist, you have to go to this like right side, which is in no way inferior. It's just a different side. And then if you are specializing within a certain size group, then you go to the left. So it just looked more natural this way. And we also thought it was very important to give you some context when you were deciding. So when you're deciding between races, we want to give you the information you need to base your decision. Like what is this race? What are their kind of main characteristics? What are their main weapon systems and defense systems? And what do they prefer using against you? And this should be high level. It should be something you can compare between each other. So it's not going into any great details. It's just giving you enough information so that you're interested in exploring it further. And the same goes with the ship groups, just giving you the high-level details, what makes this ship group different from the other ones. Like frigates, they're agile and fast. You'll blow them up pretty quickly, though. And then if you go into a battleship, they're fast at killing you, but they're not fast at getting away from you. So these type of information that especially new players just don't have a way to grasp early on in the game, which just comes with time. And now we just want to be accessible in a centralized manner where they can kind of easily compare between them. So for example, you see the box down here, someone has hovered over the frigate group, and then they see the frigate icon a little bit bigger and some information about the group. And then they can hover over the different icons, which then explain these main attributes of that group. And when you would be going and looking at the actual ships, because what would this system be without actually looking at the ships themselves? We definitely haven't finalized any kind of view on that. But what we will do is have it high level enough so that you can easily compare them between each other, both within the same group and within different groups, and even groups within one race and then another one. So you have all these different comparable options all at once. So it needs to be high level enough for you to actually just be able to grasp that information on the screen. So this will not compete with all the detailed information in other places in the game. But we're definitely nowhere near done, and you probably know these stats so well that you'll notice that they don't make sense here. This is not that ship. We're not changing that ship to that name, don't worry. But when you are progressing in a game normally, you usually start playing that game from the bottom. So you'll never have the situation where you're playing a game and you all of a sudden go into a progression tree and see it all lit up, because then you just don't know what happened. You didn't get that gratifying feeling that you've actually built this up yourself. It just popped in like that. So we have that problem in EVE because some of you have been playing it for 10 years. And if you open this up and it's all like, lit up like a Christmas tree because you've progressed so far in the game, you're just not going to know like how did it get like this and what is actually completed and what is not. So one of the things that we want to focus our efforts on is to have it light itself up from the ground up when you open it up for the first time. So you'll actually see it animate exactly how you've progressed. So imagine having played the game for 10 years, and then at the same time as you're breathing in and out, you can see how that progression has happened, all in like a few seconds. This is me, 10 years history. So that's really just important, because then you understand what has actually unlocked itself, what has maxed, and where you're kind of heading, and where you should be going next. So we want to implement that, put the visualization of the progression in there from scratch when you open up for the first time. And give you tools also to just understand where you should be going. So it's not just to visualize where you've gone before, but actually be able to understand what would make sense in terms of what you already know to go next. And of course, we have these different views that we want to put up. Like if you filter things out, you just want to see certain ships or certain groups, or you want to look into the faction ones, then we just show them. It's not going to clutter it with everything at the same time. And one of the ideas we had with the faction ships was to actually show the icons of the ships in the other races that the technology is derived from. So you're maybe looking at ships from the Grusta, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'll look at the cruisers from Galente as well. And you can just click on that, and you go into that group. So now I'm going to show you a video of some of the wireframe prototypes we've done in client. So this is going to be exciting to talk over, because it goes really fast. So we started off with trying out different things where we're showing the whole tree at the same time for all the races. This was very hard to visualize, because we couldn't really fit all of them together unless we made them all go into different directions. And as you can see, that made us have to kind of flip the camera every time you would go into each and every one of them. And then when you're browsing through the ships, the problem here was that you would kind of lose track of where you were in the tree, because you didn't have the tree visible anymore. But it was nice to look at, for sure. And here we're trying out a different method where we're going into different directions. We had some problems of like thinking it was too similar to some icons, so we might not go with that. But at least it gave you a good like central point. Going over this a circle was problematic, because then you lose track of where you're going in the tree. You don't really know what's up anymore. So we tried also just turning the ships only and keeping the lines the same. This, however, made it hard for us to zoom in on the ships themselves, but what it did really well was explain the size difference between the ships. And of course, and just being able to see that and just visualize how the camera zooms out every time you go up. And also, we wanted to try to make the ship spinning be connected to the size of the ship. So this was actually more of an effort than to spin a frigate. You know, just if you own a Titan, you should have to spend a few more, scrolls. It's just. So here we had all of the trees pointing upwards together, and then you could kind of navigate into one, navigate out. We tried a different method with looking at the ships. It was a carousel of some sort, so then you could really see each ship at each time really well. Maybe the problem here was that actually picking the ship you wanted, which was potentially at the bottom, was a little bit of a hassle. Also, one of the things that was problematic with the hologram, even though we liked this shader a lot, was that when you have different ships with different skins, you couldn't really visually see the difference. So we would have to solve that in some way in the UI if we wanted to keep these holograms, because they just look awesome. This is just so much fun. Maybe this one, I don't know. So this is definitely something we would love to improve in the future and just work with a little bit more. We think it's very valuable to do these types of prototypes, to just explore what can work and what can't work. So just to kind of go over the basics of these things, when we were doing the global view, our main goals was to have a global progression, so you would be able to see all the progression in the game throughout all the races. And that's, of course, a lot of information. So we needed to find a way to put that all together at once. And we wanted you to have relevant race information. Just understand the difference between the races in terms of their ships. And just a clear understanding of the groups, the ship groups, what purpose they serve. The pain points we had was finding the right layout. We certainly did a lot of different prototypes, but they all had both pros and cons. So it's definitely a challenge to find something that has all the criteria we had. And we needed to display the information without clutter, which is, of course, always problematic with a game that has so much information you need. And then the balance between visualizing the progression and actually planning it. So a lot of the things you saw here were ways to see where you've been before. But when you actually want to plan a progression and go somewhere, we needed to cater to that as well. So having the information and the feedback to do that at the same time as you have the information about what you already did was the challenge. So in terms of the ship group view itself, the pros were that the size difference was very well explained. You could just see them actually just by seeing the camera kind of tilt back and the whole thing kind of just zoom out. And then when you would pick a Titan, it would just break it all, so that just made you feel that ship was, that much bigger than the other ones. And the comparison was pretty good. I mean, you can just visually compare the ships within a group very well. And you could see the progression level really quickly. I mean, we definitely will fiddle with these iconic ways of explaining the progression, but just being able to see it, the information in a graphical way is just really rewarding, and being able to see where you actually stand today, just colored in one picture, is exciting. The cons, of course, is that the navigation with the perspective view was problematic. We had to look at ways to keep you kind of in the loop of where you are in progression. So if you went out of the actual tree to view the ships, you weren't really looking at the progression anymore, you were just looking at the ships. And comparing hulls with hologram shaders, of course, is problematic because then you're not seeing the skin. And then, of course, the carousel was a nice feature, but it might be a little bit of a problem to navigate it, especially if you use this a lot. So the conclusion was that we got a lot of good data from the prototype work we did. And this is kind of big, because when we were doing this feature, we realized that it doesn't matter how well we show you how you've progressed. If you can't plan it in such a nice manner as well, then what's the point? And however we could do it today, we would always need to look at the skill training, because that is basically what progression is in the game. You can't just go into the tree and click on a Titan, and it just says, you got 3 more years to go. Go and take a nap and come back. There's just no such way currently in the game. So we are definitely going to look at that. We don't really know what we're going to do. I can't promise anything. I just know we want to make it easy for you to progress in the game in the future. We want to improve the notification and messaging of how you unlock ships. Because when you unlock one ship, you're sometimes unlocking another one. You just don't know it. So we want to give you better information about what you're actually unlocking and what you can then do with that. And then we have to be careful to have a really good relationship between art and design. We have to make sure that the visual style is fitting to the game, but we also want to make it very readable and easy to use. So we're going to collaborate a lot between the art department and the design department to kind of finalize the visual style. And we, of course, are going to be looking a lot into the navigation of this and just the overall flow, just how the user experience of using this system will be. And in order to do that well, we have to do a lot of user testing. We want to involve the community in that, so expect some information on that in the coming weeks. Because the feedback from you guys is the most important thing, because you're going to be using this for years, so it better be something you can use. So we want your feedback. We want to know what you feel could benefit this project. We really think that a progression tool, a visualizer in the game is dearly needed, and we would hope to get your help on getting it as good as we can into the game. All right, thank you. So we don't actually have a timer. Yes, we do. Okay, we have plenty of time for questions. And if you have any detailed questions you think won't fit in here, you can snapshot this QR code here. It actually ties to a survey that we have where we're asking questions specifically about this feature, things we want to know, how you want to see us develop. So if you want to have your mark on this feature, you can definitely do that by filling out the survey. We will listen to that survey for sure. But questions? Mike.
I know you guys don't have any specific timelines for any of this, but is there any, hopefully by this amount of time, or is just kind of?
Hopefully by August.
Hopefully that would be a very best case scenario, but I would kind of expect it to be slightly later than that.
Okay.
Here's the engineer talking, so I guess.
Yeah, I'm here to say no, basically. So no.
Thanks.
In terms of certificates, sometimes there are skills that just aren't useful to a fit. So shield compensation skills comes to mind, like whoever uses passive explosive hardeners. Yeah. So when you're looking at sort of the elite level certificate and you can't get it because you're not training explosive passive hardeners to get that thing. So yeah.
Yeah, elite is about being elite in the ways of the universe. So you'll have to train the passive shield as well. So when you finally get elite, you will say, I'm so much better than that guy.
Thank you.
I have possibly an idea for your hologram thing. If you have a window, kind of like an X-ray machine that is over it, that once it passes through it, it would show the shader type thing. And maybe that window, you'd be able to size it so that you could either put it over one ship or the whole group.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool idea. Who knows?
Is there any graphics programmers from CCP here? Note that down. We'll look at that.
There is, I might add to that, there is like a performance concern that we can't really show too many ships in their full glory due to loading times. So, I don't know. Thanks for the idea.
I guess another idea would be to show your progression and how close you are to a specific ship in the tree. You know how you have the lines, they light up once you've unlocked it. Perhaps the lines will slowly progress towards the unlocked state, the less the amount of skill points you have to get there.
Yeah, so the actual location would be like equivalent to the amount. Yeah?
And regarding your visualization, when you first open it, I'd hope you guys would put like a historical thing where you could actually refresh it and view it again type thing.
Yeah, so that is something you can definitely do. However, if you have it set by default, we wanted to just do that for you once, and then most players just want to access stuff really quickly from that point. But if you want to uncheck that and just see it happen every time, that should be possible. And fraps it and share it.
As a new player myself, I started about 4 months ago, and I kind of dabble here and there. I don't have a whole lot of time for it myself, but knowing what ship to go to next and just seeing how many turrets they have and how much speed they have would be really nice. So like if you're on the tree and you're branching out and you see all the ships, maybe you can click on it and say, this one has so many turrets, or you could even do maybe a side-by-side comparison of the ships and click on the features you want to know about and just bring it up so you compare ship by ship, like you do when you buy a camera or something like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's cool.
Yeah, that's actually something we have put some thought into doing. That's something we are hoping to include in the final feature. Some very efficient way of comparing ships. That's like one of the main goals with the feature.
Hi, I have a question concerning the icons you showed. I know this is primarily a progression focus, but have you considered using these as an informative tool when it comes to maps and fleet use of it? So you actually group it and you have access to doing assigning, just using these icons to group. This is the frigate squad. This is the battle cruiser squad, and also use this as an informationable tab that you can use on the map, because then you could actually know that that group is there, that group is there.
So what we'll most definitely do is introduce some type of icons for the ship groups in this feature, and then as we see how it just evolves with the players, maybe this will be something that players agree is really readable and understandable and just makes sense, and then we can see it kind of naturally progress into other areas of the game. But we won't do that until we see it, just working here, because this is a feature that isn't, critical to combat and stuff like that. So that's the logical way to do it.
Thank you. Currently with EveMon, you can add a plan for your skills. So you can take a look at a ship and say, okay, I want to fly that, add plan, and it gives you a list of the skills you need. Do you have any plans for adding something like that, where it's not a skill queue, but a skill plan, where you could theoretically see what it's going to take to do it?
Oh, there's so many things we've looked at. I mean, there's just endless possibilities. Of course, we have the system that we have currently, and we just have to kind of figure out if we want to cater to that system, or if we want to, revisit how that system works. But it definitely, makes sense to just be able to just see what you need, and then see how much time it will take, and just have this all very visible and easily understandable.
Okay, thanks.
Any plans to accommodate this system to modules as well? Because to this day, I have no idea what's the difference between pulse lasers and beam lasers.
Okay, pause identification system.
No, then you say modules.
Modules.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something we discussed initially. I mean, it just makes sense to start with ships. On the technical sides, we are trying to take care that we don't write ourselves in a corner, that we can reuse this code, for example, to do something similar, like you say, have a tree for modules and whatnot. So yeah, that's definitely something we have considered, but that's not going to be in there, in the first release, and that's not going to be a part of the ship tree itself. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more? Yeah.
Hi there. I'm not sure if a guy touched on this earlier, but the ship identification little symbols, would it be possible to stick those in the overview? Just so that, for example, I've only been playing for like 6 years, and I don't know what the heck a start is. I don't know what an EOS is, but if it came up on the overview, it might give me a clue as to what I'm actually fighting against. Just an idea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Another idea or question, could we, from that skill tree, drill into any of the available fittings that we have for each of those types of ships? So if I'm looking at the skill tree and I'm finding a Drake, can I drill off into my Drake fittings, for example?
That would be, a long-term idea would be to have like public fittings or even fittings with this. So if I'm looking at my Drake, I see not only the fittings I have, but the fittings that guy I published, or this guy over here, and I just compare, ooh, this one is bad, vote down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the kind of future ideas we have for this feature is to tie it more into just social interaction. So you can kind of share what you've done with others. So if you're one of those Eve Uni guys or someone else that's kind of coaching others to progress in a certain way, you can either share a certain part of your tree, or even just plan out a progression path for them and just share it with them. And then there's maybe ways for you to kind of inject information. So when you're looking at a certain ship, and this is the official kind of usage, but then there's this additional information about what other players are using it for, and what the stats are of it. Like, is this the highest killer or the highest loser in the game? And so these kind of things would be also interesting to see when you're browsing a ship. Like, just see its track record and just know what other players are doing it, in terms of fitting the ship.
Yeah, we could have your kill-death ratio by ship, and if you just like have a bad kill-death ratio, just like a huge "you suck."
Yeah, but it would be a beautiful "you suck."
Yeah, of course.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you.
See you at the pub crawl.